Welcome back to Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. Yes, I'm Jamie G. And yes, I'm here at Magnum Mills, and we're going to help you seize the gap and stop being so inefficient in your fantasy football leagues. You're welcome. We're headed into week 10, and once again, we've got a ton of injuries to deal with, and four teams are on a bye. Whatever your situation, we've got you covered with our waiver wire recommendations for week 10. It's week 10, Mills. It's week 10.
This is wild. We're more than halfway through the fantasy season. Thank you for sticking with us here on Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. You can find our content wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Find us on social media at Seize the Gap FF and on the web at seizethegapff.com. Very simple and easy to remember, just like the flaps, FLAPS. Follow, like, and please subscribe if you had fun. Please remember to hit the thumb. And please know that while we know there are a ton of different fantasy football leagues, formats, settings, rules, all that stuff across the various universes, we're doing our best here. So we're going to be referring to the most popular platform, that is ESPN Fantasy. Generally, we'll be referring to 12-team PPR leagues. And we are generally trying to help you out with players who are available in at least 50% of ESPN leagues. So the majority of leagues they are available in. And that's about it. So again, 12-team PPR, ESPN, 50% or more. If you don't know, now you know.
Let's start with the quarterback position.
Couple of injuries here. If you own
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels, you can put him on IR, but it's not going to be pretty. Dislocated his non-throwing elbow. Probably doesn't return this season, but I wouldn't cut him outright if you have a space available on IR. CJ Stroud, the Texans quarterback, is in the concussion protocol. Could be out here in week 10. Two quarterbacks who could be returning are Brock Purdy of the 49ers. He will just basically be on this list every week until he returns. Ditto that for the Cardinals quarterback, Kyler Murray. With the Cardinals winning on Monday Night Football, who knows if it'll be Brisket or not going forward, whether or not Murray is healthy, but he was inactive for Monday Night Football. So we'll see how they deal with that going forward. And then we have two do it now players. These are players who are over the 50% threshold, but owned in less than 80% of ESPN leagues. So if they are available, you should go ahead, spend a lot of your fab. Do it now. In the case of these quarterbacks in a one quarterback league, I would spend up to 25% of my fab on these players. They are Jackson Dart of the New York Giants, owned in 77% of leagues, and Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams, owned in 74% of leagues. So if they're out there, you need help at the quarterback position, go ahead, make it happen. Hopefully, a bid is somewhere between 10 and 25% of your fab should get it done. Two priority ads this week, and they are guys we mentioned previously as priority and speculative ads, but they're stepping up a bit here. We have Sam Darnold of the Seattle Seahawks, owned in 42% of ESPN leagues. Should be able to get him for somewhere between maybe 5 and 10% of your fab. Shown a decent floor with some ceiling here. He took the Jackson Smith and Jigba. A lot to like there. And then old man Flacco, only owned in 33% of leagues. That was actually about 37% last week. So his ownership went down, even though he had a career high week this week against the Bears. Crazy game, almost 90 points scored in that one. So I don't know if you could trust him all season, but I think you want to ride old man Flacco till the wheels fall off, phrasing intended. And then we have a couple of streaming options for you here in week 10. First up, we have Michael Penix Jr. of the Atlanta Falcons. Not great performances overall, but did have a decent day with the 3 touchdowns to Drake London in week 9. The Falcons are traveling to Indianapolis in week 10. Penix is available in 88% of leagues. And then we have Marcus Mariota of the Commanders filling in for Jaden Daniels, available in 95% of leagues. At home against Detroit, you figure they're going to have to score a bunch of points there. Kind of the same thing for Penix. Both of these guys are going to have to throw the ball, hopefully create some points. The matchups aren't bad. Jamie G, if between the two, who would you prefer to stream next week at quarterback? Michael Penix Jr. at the Colts or Marcus Mariota at home versus Detroit?
Probably Michael Penix Jr., but it's close.
I think I'm with you there. Similar floor. He has a little bit higher of a ceiling there, as seen by Drake London. Maybe we finally get a Bijan game. I mean, I know we'd love to get a Bijan game at some point in the near future.
Yes, we would. Week 9 was not a banner week for the running back position, but we're going to do our best here to find a couple options for you. What are we working with here, Mills? Tell us about the running backs.
Well, we did have one new injury here. Aaron Jones of the Vikings got a shoulder. Thinks he'll be able to play next week, but I would call him closer to questionable than probable. And then you have a couple running backs who could be returning this week. Hopefully, Quinshon Judkins. It seems like he is fairly likely to return. Bucky Irving, he is in the air, and then Trey Benson of the Cardinals, who is eligible to return from IR, could return at least, if not this week, in the next couple of weeks. We have a couple of do it now ads here. Again, these are players who are owned in more than 50% of ESPN leagues, but less than 80% of leagues. They can be very crucial players. So if they're still out there in your league, you're going to want to go ahead and portion a decent number of your fab to these players, maybe even plus 25%, 35%, 45%, depending on your need at the running back position. First up, we have Jordan Mason of the Vikings, owned in 71% of leagues. So, especially if you own Jonesy, I think you need to make this move happen. If Jonesy is out for any given amount of time, Mason becomes infinitely more startable. And given Jones's injury history, it's not impossible that he gains a lot of value in the fantasy playoffs if Jones were to miss time. Next up, we have RJ Harvey, rookie running back for the Denver Broncos, owned in 67% of leagues. Seems to have settled into a decent role in the passing game where he's going to pick up 5 to 7 targets. He scored touchdowns in 2 straight games, so a lot to like here from the rookie running back for the Broncos. So if he was cut, go ahead. You could probably get him. Yeah, I bet you for 10, 15% of your fab. It hurts a little bit that he scored a touchdown, but I am a little bit bullish on his prospects, so don't mind adding him. And then obviously Kyle Monangai, Chicago Bears running back, absolutely smashed in week 9, owned in 67% of leagues. So we're doing this in order of ownership. So he drops down a little bit, but if he is still out there, I think you can safely bid up to 75% of your fab on him. Might not even get it, but I think they're still going to work Swift in when he returns. Could be a little bit of a guessing game, but overall, I do like his prospects. And then we have Woody Marks of the Houston Texans, owned in 62% of leagues. It seems like they're going to be destined to keep it a split with him and Nick Chubb. They're all out there in more leagues than you would think. So go ahead, spend a bunch of fab on them if you need to pick them up, get some help at the running back position. We do have 3 priority ads here, starting with Trey Benson of the Arizona Cardinals, eligible to come off IR. Given what the Cardinals have gotten from their other running backs in the interim, he should immediately assume a large role there. Owned at 49% of leagues. I would go very, very, very heavily on him. I just didn't fall in the do it now category because he's actually under the 50% threshold, but I would probably spend up to 75% of my fab on Trey Benson if he's out there. Then we have Tajay Spears of the Tennessee Titans. I'm still lightly buying here at 44% ownership. I think you would probably be able to get him at this point if he's still out there with a bid of around 5 to 10% of your fab. I don't know what the Titans are going to be able to do on offense going forward, but I think he will be a bigger part of it than Tony Pollard. So if he's out there, go ahead and add him. And then now we are recording this on Monday nights. We want to speculate a little bit ahead of the trade deadline. And even if not, Isaiah Davis of the New York Jets merits an ad here. Only owned in 9% of leagues. Would step in as a starter if Brees Hall were to be traded. And even if Hall is there for the Jets, he should be a viable kind of streaming option slash handcuff. So don't mind adding him. And then as far as speculative ads at running back, trying to help you out. So we're going deep here. You always want to make sure that the top handcuffs are rostered. We have Tyler Algier of the Falcons, owned in 31% of leagues. Brian Robinson of the San Francisco 49ers scored a big touchdown this week, owned in 22% of leagues. And then Blake Corum, don't count him out. The Los Angeles Rams handcuff to Kyron Williams is only owned in 7% of leagues. Those should be rostered where you can find space to do so. And then you have some young handcuffs with upside. They have a chance of actually winning the job a little bit based on what happens even without injury. I still like Bashal Tutin of the Jaguars, owned in 22% of leagues. Tank Bigsby looks interesting as the handcuff to Saquon Barkley for the Eagles at 26% ownership. Jaden Blue is now the handcuff to Javante Williams for the Cowboys at 13%. Keep an eye on Ollie Gordon, the second for the Miami Dolphins. If he is out there, he is the handcuff to Devin Achane, owned in 12% of leagues. Then we have Dylan Sampson, handcuffed to Quinshon Judkins for the Cleveland Browns, owned in 10% of leagues. Again, Judkins dealing with shoulder injury. And then a little bit more under the radar, we have Emmanuel Wilson of the Green Bay Packers. Seems to now be the clear-cut handcuff to Josh Jacobs, owned in 9% of leagues. And finally, Devin Neal of the New Orleans Saints. Tough to pick and choose options on that Saints offense, but he is now looking like the clear-cut handcuff to Alvin Kamara after the injury to Kendry Miller. So if Neal's out there, again, most of these guys you want to speculate on. Don't overdo it with the bid, somewhere in that 5% of your fab range, whatever you have left. Hopefully, it's enough to get the job done for a couple of them. And then we have guys that can also be that kind of minimum bid range, but could be potential streamers. And they include Terrell Jennings of the New England Patriots, owned in 5% of leagues. Patriots are traveling to Tampa Bay. Not the greatest matchup for running back, but they seem insistent on using anybody other than Travion Henderson. And then we have Jamie G's, former guy, maybe still his guy a little bit, Devin Singletary of the New York Giants. With Scadaboo out, Singletary has a decent role here. Only owned in 5% of leagues. Could be startable as an RB2 or flex against the Bears, so don't mind that. Shouldn't cost you more than 5% of your fab or so.
Well, there was some monster performances from the wide receivers in week 9, and a few of those guys might be out there on your wire in most leagues. But first, we need to poke around and find out with the injuries.
Puka comes back and Puka leaves again. You know, the gods give Puka and then they Puka around and take it away. He did leave with a chest injury. Sean McVay indicated that he would have been able to return if necessary, but you certainly want to keep an eye on that. Packers rookie wide receiver Matthew Golden is day to day with the shoulder. Monitor that. Same thing for Brian Thomas Jr., sophomore wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's got an ankle. Kayshon Boutte of the New England Patriots has a hamstring. He will probably miss multiple weeks. We have a few wide receivers who could return in week 10, including Ricky Parasol, Calvin Ridley, A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Mims, and Luther Burden III. We have one do it now ad here that is Romeo Dubs, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, owned in 73% of leagues, especially with the injury to Tucker Kraft. He has solidified himself as probably the top target in the Packers passing game. So if he is out there, you could blow at least up to 66% of your fab on him, I believe. And then we have a couple priority ads, continuing with Troy Franklin of the Denver Broncos, owned in 52% of leagues, established himself as the clear-cut wide receiver 2 for the Broncos, led the team in targets this week with 10. And then we have Parker Washington of the Jacksonville Jaguars, only owned in 5% of ESPN leagues. I prefer him to Diami Brown, and I would spend up to probably 35-40% of my fab in leagues. It depends a little bit on what your situation is, but I do like him more than Diami Brown, who I'll mention in a minute. And then finally, Torrey Horton, he of the 2 touchdowns on Sunday Night Football, rookie wide receiver for the Seahawks, only owned in 7% of leagues. Don't go over your skis here. Cooper Kupp will return. They do want to keep working in all these various tight ends that the Seahawks have, but I'm very bullish on his prospects overall, so I like him if you can get him for somewhere about, say, 10% of your fab or less. And then for 5% of your fab or less, if you just want to speculate a little bit, don't mind taking a chance on Brandon Ayuk of the San Francisco 49ers, owned in 32% of leagues. Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers, owned in 26% of leagues. Darius Slayton of the New York Giants, owned in 15% of leagues. Alec Pierce of the Indianapolis Colts, owned in 12% of leagues. And then finally, as I mentioned, Diami Brown of the Jaguars, only owned in 2% of leagues.
I tell you what, the tight end position, it's way more fun when Brock Bowers is healthy. And Dalton Kincaid, that guy, he ain't so bad either. Unfortunately, we lost one of our favorite young tight ends for the rest of the season. Injuries suck, man.
They really do. And man, Tucker Kraft was just starting to come into his own. Had that monster game against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football the previous week. So really hurt to lose him here. Also lost Cole Kmet to the concussion here. He's in the protocol now. Led to a big breakout game for Colston Loveland. So if you own Tucker Kraft, nothing else you can do. Tuck him on IR. Hopefully this seemed like a clean ACL. He can be back to start the season next year. So if you are not really looking at yourself as a contender, or you have assets to spare and you can get him and tuck him on IR, whatever, he is definitely still a buy for me. And there is one do it now ad at Dalton Kincaid of the Buffalo Bills. Jamie G, he's only owned in 71% of ESPN leagues. Out there in 29%. We've touted him in this space before. Continue to do so. He should be owned in 95+% of leagues. So go ahead and make that happen. 2 priority ads. Once again, going back to the well with Harold Fannin Jr., rookie tight end for the Cleveland Browns, owned in 51% of leagues. And making the jump up here from speculative to priority is Colston Loveland, Chicago Bears rookie tight end, only owned in 24% of ESPN leagues now. Had a monster game here, game clinching touchdown in overtime. Massive game for the young man, for the rookie tight end. So very much like him. Couple of speculative ads, starting with Dalton Schultz of the Houston Texans, owned in 21% of leagues. managed to get it done even with Davis Mills at quarterback. Will be a check down. There's not a lot of sexiness to his game, nor a ton of touchdown upside. But again, in PPR, especially in tight end premium, he should be able to rack up some volume for you. If you want to take a chance on some guys that have more explosive upside, I'll lead off with Isaiah Likely, Baltimore Ravens tight end, finally getting some work in after breaking his foot in the preseason. So nice to see him getting worked in with a healthy Lamar Jackson. He's out there in 96% of leagues. And then guys who are out there in basically all leagues, we have Luke Musgrave. He will be probably the first man up to replace Tucker Kraft in Green Bay. And he's owned in about 0.5% of leagues. Same thing for Terrence Ferguson, rookie tight end drafted in the second round for the Los Angeles Rams. Rams did a crazy thing this week. I believe they completed passes, at least two passes, to four different tight ends. Does not happen a lot, but they drafted Ferguson in the second round. Shows a lot of confidence in him. So if you're trying to get on the next Oronde Gadsden before it happens, Terrence Ferguson's probably your guy. Jamie G, we're doing this every week now. The Steelers are utilizing four tight ends. They're always getting decent, stats at the end of the day as an aggregate, and when you add them together. But we have to pick our favorite each week. Assuming it's 1.0 PPR, Jamie G, who is your favorite Pittsburgh Steelers tight end? Who will score the most fantasy points in Week 10?
The answer should be Pat Fryermuth, and it should be pretty easy. Actually, the answer should be Jonnu Smith, but let's just throw that away because of Art Art Smith variants. But it should be Pat Fryermuth. I'm gonna go with the big dog. I'm going with Darnell Washington. He's getting looks when it's 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3. He's getting red zone targets. He doesn't have the big play potential of a Fryermuth or a Jonnu Smith, but I'm going to continue to lean on the big dog, Darnell Washington.
That's what I had written on the paper, so I'm going to stick with it. We're just sticking with the big man here. So, all right, we're both going with Darnell Washington. So, of course, here it comes. It's going to be Hunter Hayward week because that's how these things work. A couple of streaming options for you at tight end. We'll start with the guys who are most owned and then work our way down to guys who should be available in most leagues. At the top, Kyle Pitts. Say what you will about the Falcons tight end. He's owned in 73% of leagues, but he gets a great matchup at the Colts, who have been beaten up by tight ends this season. Definitely one of the best matchups you can get for a tight end. And then we have Hunter Henry owned in 67% of leagues. Another solid matchup at the Buccaneers and what could be a high scoring game. Another player we've seen that has, pretty good, touchdown equity here. If Hunter Henry's going to do it, he's probably going to score a touchdown or two. And then, and the other side of the ball in that game, our guy, it's getting on here, Cade Otton, owned in 33% of leagues. The Patriots have been weakest against the tight end. That's the way you can exploit them. The Bucks are still banged up at the receiver position, possibly at the running back position, so we like Otton. And then finally mentioned him before as a speculative ad, Dalton Schultz, only owned in 21% of leagues. He's going against the Jaguars. He did okay with Davis Mills last week, and we saw the Jaguars give up not one, not two, but three touchdowns to Brock Bowers. So perhaps another tight end could do a little bit of a damage against them.
Are you in there, baby? You in there? Yeah. Starting defense. Place at the table.
Oh, perhaps, Mills. And not perhaps, but always, offense rules everything around us when it comes to fantasy football. But we feel that the defense and special team units, they deserve a place at the table. Mills, go ahead and make them a plate and let us know who the top defense special team streaming options for week 10 are.
Oh, I think you will have something to like here, friendo. At the top, been recommending him for a couple of weeks, and it seems like it's happening. The Baltimore Ravens. They're traveling to the Vikings. It's a little bit tough, but the Lions defense still did okay, despite the fact that the Vikings won. There were still turnovers and sacks to be had. Ravens are now owned in 43% of leagues, and they have one of the better upcoming schedules for fantasy DSTs. Next up, we have Jamie G's Buffalo Bills, owned in 36% of leagues. They have been getting to the passer recently, despite the injuries on the defense. They get a great matchup this week at Miami. No more of that crazy, Miami in early September stuff. It's going to be nice and cool when the Bills are traveling to Miami. And then finally, we have the Cleveland DST coming out of the bye, now only owned in 30% of leagues, getting what has theoretically been the best matchup for fantasy DSTs this season. What's your level of confidence here in your Buffalo Bills at Miami this week? Yeah, are you believing it? I know there's a lot of injuries here, but we saw nice steps forward from a Harrison, Cole Bishop last week. Can they turn, Tua over a couple times here, get some sacks from Joey Bosa? What's your level of confidence in Bills DST this week?
If they can get some pressure on Tua, I think there's turnovers will be had. I'm confident in it, but I'm not like I'm cautiously optimistic, Mills. I guess most Bills fans are nowadays.
Fair enough, but they did work against Patrick Mahomes, man. That was
100%.
really impressive. Doing it against Andy Dalton and the Panthers, okay, but that was a nice way to carry forward. Again, I know there are some injuries, but it was nice to see some young players in that secondary take a step forward. And they're a team that started out being highly owned as a DSD. Now they are available in the majority of leagues. They get some decent matchups within the division going forward. So, not a bad speculative pickup.
Definitely not. And I'll say, since Sean McDermott took over play calling, and he's protecting Bobby Babich as he should, making it seem like it's both our bikes. I just keep it at my house, right? It's Sean McDermott calling defense here. That's what it's been for the last couple of weeks, and you've seen a change really the second half of that Atlanta game. This defense has been playing a lot better. You're starting to get some guys back. Best game Colt Bishop has played, and I think actually credit that to Jordan Poyer being in the secondary with him. He's now in the right spot, and you're able to see the athleticism that the Bills fell in love with him. He plays fast and physical, and when he's in the right spot and he's not thinking, he can be a real good player. So, couple that with Max Harrison being able to run stride for stride with the fastest player in the league. There's definitely things to be upside. I just hope the Bills can get through a game without losing a critical player, because for the last couple of weeks and really for this entire season and for the last couple of years, feels like that's what happens. But yeah, cautiously optimistic here, Mills. I think it's definitely a good ad.
Yeah, in the end, we're giving our due diligence to the defense. Do you believe in this resurgence from the Ravens here? They're getting healthier. They, I believe, have allowed 16 points or less in their last three games. This seems like a far cry from the units that got torched in the first couple of weeks of the season, right? And they have a great upcoming schedule.
Yeah, and look at what happened last year. Same defensive coordinator as Zach Orr. They started off the season, there was a lot of concern, and then suddenly they started getting it together. And last year, what it was they moved the safety, the from corner to safety there, and with Kyle Hamilton, they moved him from corner to safety, and it changed the entire dynamic of the defense. This year, I think it's about getting a little bit healthy, starting to figure out the pieces they got. It's different than last year's team. And no question, they're starting to figure it out and they're getting better on defense. And I just think they're going to, especially with the favorable matchups that they have, they're going to continue that trend.
Yeah, they're getting healthier and they've done some, kind of quote unquote addition by subtraction too. So something to keep an eye on here. They made some moves where they've kind of indicated, all right, we're going to give some of these other guys these chances. They've always drafted well, coached it up well. So, we're at the point of the fantasy season. You got to make your money on the edges. And you'd be surprised how many times, especially once you get to a win or go home situation, the DST is a huge thing. So trying to get on a DST like that goes on the major run before the end of the season can be a big, boon to you in your fantasy league. So, don't poo-poo the defense, dude.
No, and with Baltimore, one last thing, their offense is starting to put up points. And when defenses can pin their ears back and make a team one-dimensional, that's where things go. So,
Yeah, they can tee off.
good call on finding a good defense here. It's certainly important. Defense are people too. We need them in our lineups. And Mills, we like to get double-digit points out of them, don't we? If we can.
Oh, we do. You always like the double digits, and we're almost getting to the point now where you can start trying to plan ahead a little bit and maybe carry two defenses. It's not something I'm a huge fan of, but the later we get in the season, the more likely I am in my season-long leagues to carry two defenses to try to make sure I can get the optimal matchups. Either down the stretch to make sure I get the bye or whatever I need to do to make the playoffs, or ideally within the playoffs, you can have the best DST matchups possible.
Well, we appreciate the defense and more importantly, we appreciate you checking us out. This has been Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. Thank you guys for being with us another week. Don't you worry, we got you covered all season long. That's our commitment to you. All we ask in return is you throw the thumb, like and subscribe, hit the notification button so you don't miss it. Every single week we're banging these out. Let us know if you got questions, problems, issues, whatever it is. You can drop a comment below, or Mills will let you know where you can find all of our social media. We'll see you guys next week. Good luck this weekend.
Yeah, our specialty is exactly how much fab money to bid. Tell us the situation, and Jamie G's got the magic number where you will bid just, $1 ahead of the competitor just behind you. That's our goal, to be just better than the next guy. That's how we do it here on Seize the Gap Fantasy Football. Thanks again for checking out the show. You can find our content wherever you get your pods and on YouTube. Find us on social media at Seize the Gap FF and on the web at seizethegapff.com. Nice and easy to remember, just like the flaps, FLAPS. Very crucial to our success. Follow, like, and please subscribe if you had fun. Please touch a thumb. I'm Magnum Mills with Jamie G. Please remember to seize the gap and stop being so inefficient.
And we don't care if you're old. You need to seize the gap.
Listen to your heart.